The murder of Charlie Kirk is something I, of course, completely condemn. Regardless of whether we agree or disagree, any political violence of any kind should have no place in our discourse, should be no part of our culture. That is the opposite of what democracy is. And I believe that there are three important lessons that we can learn from this tragic murder of Charlie Kirk. Now, the first lesson that I believe we can learn from this murder is actually the opposite of the lessons that Charlie Kirk himself taught. He said that violence against other people, deaths at the hands of gunmen, was a price worth paying in order to maintain and uphold the Second Amendment of the US Constitution. In other words, the right to have your own gun comes with a price, and that price can be sometimes murder of innocent people, and that's the price we have to pay. I disagree with that completely. I actually think, as actually the majority of Americans think, there should be far greater controls on gun use and gun buying, and in general, the regulation and use of guns in the US. You know, if you're going to drive a car, you have to pass a test. You have to prove your level of competency. A car is nowhere near as lethal as most guns are these days, and yet you have to demonstrate your ability to use it safely. The same should happen with guns. Even a smartphone has, actually is protected in some ways, but we're using fingerprints and other things to make sure they're not misused by the wrong people. Even those technologies don't exist on guns, and they should all be required too. There are many, many, many ways in which gun usage can be restricted and made more safe as a result. And that, of course, needs to happen. And as I say, the majority of Americans want that. So that unquestionably is the first lesson. And whether it's Charlie Kirk or anybody else, nobody should be an innocent victim to gun crime in this way. The second thing we need to do is all check ourselves. Any act of violence like this requires an act of self-reflection. And without doubt, we need to be careful in the language that we use. So if we're using language like nasty rabid animals to describe our political opponents, then we are doing something wrong, and we're contributing to a cycle of hatred. Therefore, always being wary, being conscious of the language we're using, making clear our opposition to the people who we disagree with, but without using language that's inflammatory or hateful, is really important. And you'll notice I always do that. I certainly recommend that to all people who I connect with here and elsewhere. The third thing we need to do is be very clear about where the greatest dangers lie in terms of provoking and engaging in violence. Greatest danger exists amongst people who are unconscious of the way in which they stoke violence. So actually the words I just used before to talk about the kind of thing we should police ourselves against, like nasty, rabid animal, talking about other people like that, those are the words that Trump's used in the past. And that kind of language, without doubt, stokes violence. And so Trump and the people on his side actually do not show any capacity for self-reflection, in which they can do what I just did, which is self-check. Okay, is there anything we're doing to stoke this? There seems to be no evidence of that. And therefore the greatest danger lies in those people who are stoking this in a way that they're not even conscious of. They don't even see that they're doing something that's dangerous. And that's where the greatest danger does actually lie at this time. You see, recently, two Minnesota people were killed. One was the former Speaker of the House. Melissa Hortman and her husband, Mark Hortman, were gunned down, an act of political violence. Did Trump say anything to condemn that? Did he come out to try and unite the country after that? No, not a single word of recognition of that political assassination. In fact, in 2024, every act of political murder that took place actually took place by a gunman that was a far-right extremist. Every single time in 2024. Has Trump come out to condemn any of those? No, not a single one. So again, here we have complete lack of consciousness, lack of awareness of the degree to which one side of this is generally stoking this, not checking themselves, and not learning any lessons at any point. And we need to be clear-eyed about that, where this greater danger lies. And the most dangerous thing of all is having a president who does not see it as their job to actually bring the country together. And Trump was explicit about that on Fox and Friends on Friday. He was interviewed there in the wake of the assassination, and he was asked, "What are you going to do, Mr. President, now to help us unite as a country, to help bring us together?" Now that should be a standard question that every president is asked at these times, and that every president answers in a standard way, considering it to be their responsibility to bring the nation together, to bring a divided nation together, to try and quell the violence that is erupting around them. And what was Trump's answer? He literally said, "I couldn't care less about that." Those were his actual words. "I couldn't care less about bringing the country together." That is the greatest danger of all, when the ultimate political authority in the land does not see it as their responsibility to try to damp down the rhetoric, allow cooler waters to prevail, and prevent more people dying from this. It seems that Trump not only abrogates that responsibility, he's perfectly happy to continue to stoke those flames. And as I've talked about in the past, it seems to be toward a specific end. It's also been spoken about recently, where he and his members of his administration have spoken about the Democratic Party as an extremist, violent organization. Again, setting it up to the position where eventually they can ban it and start to prevent their opponents from even being on the ballot box. So all of these factors mean that the greatest danger, not just democracy, but the greatest danger to peace and safety on the streets of America, is the current administration and their followers, who refuse to learn, who refuse to acknowledge their contribution to it, because the left should also acknowledge its own contribution whenever it's there, and you see that happening. But when the right and the MAGA supporters don't acknowledge any of their own contribution, then we have a real problem. And not only that, when they're led by a man who says that despite being the president of the United States, he has no responsibility to try to calm the waters and bring about peace and reconciliation in the country. That is a true recipe for toxicity and ultimate violent disaster. I hope you like my video. As a psychiatrist who loves politics and economics and philosophy, I love to make videos like this, and you can really help promote this video to other people and get it on your feed more by liking and commenting and subscribing to the video as well. We have a wonderful community of people here who comment and support each other through this very traumatic period of world history that we're going through right now. I also hope you consider becoming a subscriber to the channel and also subscribing to my e-newsletter. There's a link in the description, and that way we can stay in touch outside the channel, so you can keep abreast of all of the content that I'm making on an ongoing basis. The latest of which actually is my latest book called We the People. Very, very proud of this book. It's actually a novel, a fiction book written by myself and the famous award-winning author T.J. McGregor. Together we wrote a book about what the future might look like. Bit of a dystopian novel, but what might happen if autocracy goes to its next stage, AI predicting the potential end of humanity. I actually made a video about that, it really happened. And how things might pan out in this dystopian world, and actually how a band of committed, passionate, progressive people managed to change the trajectory, and not in the way that you think. It's not just by running a candidate and opposing the autocrat, but actually by deepening the democracy that we have and engaging in a real participatory form of democracy that sort of shifts the needle and gets us back to basics and helps us sort of rebuild our democracy. And that's within the context of a really compelling, gripping story, a bunch of fascinating characters, and I assure you, you will not be able to sort of stop turning the page until you get to the end of the book. That's what all the reviewers have said so far. Lots of people love it, and I hope you can get it. You can get it on Amazon, any of the global Amazon bookstores out there. Please do order your copy of We the People. Just put We the People Russell Razak and you'll be able to find it inside Amazon as well. Also, I hope you consider becoming a member of the channel. You can subscribe to a couple of different membership levels. All members of the channel also get some free ebooks that I produce once a month. You can buy those ebooks too from russellsbooks.com. That's russellsbooks.com, and every month I produce a new ebook on that channel, which is really about, these are the non-fiction books I produce with my team, which is really about how to learn about the world around us and the psychologies of the people who govern us, but also how to learn about ourselves, deepen our own self-awareness in a way that helps us navigate this difficult world we're in right now. So those are sort of self-help books that are produced every month, and if you're a member of the channel, you get a sort of 100% discount on those books every month. Otherwise, you can go to russellsbooks.com, as I say, and buy them anytime you like. I really hope you can become a part of this community, as I say. So this sort of supportive community, validating and helping each other, is really worth being a part of, and I hope you can join us as we all join forces to create a better tomorrow together. Thank you.